Good day, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, I will be talking about Atkinson's and Shiffrin's Cognitive Information Processing Theory, or IPT. But before that, I would love to go over on the topics that we will be discussing. First on the list is who are the person behind this theory. Next, I will be defining the meaning of IPT and also the meaning of memory. Next to that, I will be answering what the question, why do we forget information? And lastly, I will be elaborating ways on retrieving information. So what are we waiting for? Let's start. So who are the persons behind this theory? It was Richard Atkinson, wherein he was an American psychologist. He worked with different famous people like Shiffrin, wherein they developed the IPT. With him was Richard Shiffrin, who also a professor and an expert in the field of human cognition. He developed the theory of interaction of automatic and attentive processes in cognition. So Atkinson and Shiffrin are the foremost two theories who are associated with cognitive information processing theory. In 1968, they proposed a multi-stage theory of memory that explains how an information goes through a process from the moment it is received, then processed until it is stored in the memory. Relative to this theory, they introduced the information processing model. Now that we know the persons behind this theory, it is important to understand how our minds process and store information is fundamental to learning and cognition. The Atkinson's and Shiffrin's cognitive information processing theory offers a valuable framework for exploring this intricate process. This theory, often referred as the multi-stored model or Atkinson-Shiffrin model, where processes a series of stages through which information travels as it is encoded, stored, and retrieved from our memory. So, meaning of IPT, let me illustrate the three primary components of Atkinson's and Shiffrin's cognitive information processing theory. First is the information stores. This refers to the different places in the mind where information is stored, such as sensory memory, the short-term memory, and long-term memory. Next, the cognitive processes. These are the mental operations that transfer information between different memory stores, example, including encoding, retrieval, and rehearsal. And lastly, the metacognition. This refers to awareness and understanding of one's own thoughts processes, including how we remember and how we learn. What is memory? Memory is the ability to take information, store it, and recall it whenever we need it. And that's how our memory works. According to the IPT, human memorization involves three primary tasks, which are encoding, storage, retrieval. Encoding is the process of receiving, processing, and combining information. Storage is the creation of permanent record of the encoded information. And retrieval is the calling back of stored information in response to some cue for use in the process or our activity. These three works together as we keep and store information in our memory. The processes might be simple for us to understand because we already know what it meant by those words. But we just want for you to understand is that this task holds significance because without encoding, we can't store anything, while storage keeps our memory safe until we need it. And lastly, retrieval makes our memory useful. Information processing model asserts that human memory has three main stages. Information enters the human information processing system via a variety of channels associated with different senses. First, the sensory memory or sensory register. The first stage in the IP model holds all sensory information for very brief time. If this information caught our attention, then it will go to the second stage, which is the short-term memory. It is called working memory because it is where new information is temporarily placed while it is mentally processed. And lastly, it will enter the last stage, the long-term memory. It is relative permanent store in which you hold information even when you no longer attending to it. Now, let's focus on the multi-store model of Atkinson and Shiffrin. First on the list is the sensory memory. It has a great amount of capacity, but in terms of duration, sensory memory just gives input up to 1 to 3 seconds. However, its capacity also differs in what modality we use because our senses have different ways of capturing information. Next, next is the short-term memory, or also known as the 7 plus or minus 2. The short-term memory can only hold 5 to 9 chunks of information. The duration of this is around 18 seconds or less if we do not rehearse. Last on the model is the long-term memory. The capacity of this is unlimited, and the duration of the long-term memory is indefinite. But it depends in individual capacity and capability to keep informations. It is really true that our brains are really amazing, but they are not perfect. Sometimes information gets lost and there are few reasons why this happens. First is the retrieval failure. This shows us that the memory can be locked away without the right cues. This retrieval failure often linked as the tip of the tongue phenomenon, or sa Tagalog is nasa dulo ng dila ko. Next to that is the decay theory. This is theory proposed that memories will fade if they are not used, just like our muscle. They need to be exercised regularly to prevent it from failing. And lastly, the interference theory. This theory tells us that overlapping memories can tangle with each other, causing confusion. This theory is common to us as students because we usually experience it, for example, when we are studying different subjects at once for our exam. It is hard for us to remember specific details, then we will just say during the exam that I know this, I've read this. Next, let me elaborate the different ways on retrieving information. First is the rehearsal. It is repeating information over and over again to avoid forgetting it in the memory. Example to this is you might repeat memorizing your phone number just to remember it. Next is organization. Organizing information helps the brain structure in storing and making retrieval more efficient. Example to this is when you are creating a due-to list or you're organizing your lessons by subjects. Third is meaningful learning. This happens when a new information has a connection to what you already know that make it easier for you to understand and remember. Next is elaboration. This is adding additional details that the information that you have to enrich it. Example, when we are studying for our lessons, of course, we would like to elaborate that lessons by reading additional information or additional books. Next, generation. Generation is the act of actively creating knowledge. Second to the last is the visual imaginary. It is a process of creating a mental picture in order for the brain to easily process information. And lastly, on ways on retrieving information is personalization. It it is making information personally relevant. Of course, you will relate it to you personally just to remember it easily. Just like other theories, Atkinson's and Shiffrin's experience criticisms. These criticisms are oversimplification of memory process. It presents memory as linear, sequential process with information flowing from one store to another. Next, the model assumes that the short-term memory and long-term memory are unitary stores. Researchers suggest that both are more complex. And lastly, long-term memory is not a single store, but is divided into different types. Divided into different types based on the nature of the information stored and processes involved in storing and retrieving the information. Now, we will be talking about educational application of this theory. First on the list is the engagement strategies, wherein there are two. First, active participation strategy. This can implement group activities to maintain students' attention and enhance their ability to remember. Next is sensory learning strategy. Variety of teaching methods can be used to this, such as visual presentation, incorporating with music or sounds. Second application is elaborative rehearsal. There are also two. First, connecting new information to prior knowledge. This can make new materials meaningful by linking it to things students already know. And next to that is creating mind maps. This helps students understand by creating diagrams to make it easier to remember. And last application is repetition for retrieval. There are three repetitions for retrieval. First is practice quizzes. Practice quizzes helps to remember information before the actual quiz or exam. Next is the spaced repetition. This is regularly review information using interval time frame. And lastly is the assignments. Assignments can help information reinforce and retain what they have learned. Of this theory, think of a computer and your brain. Do you somehow think that your brain and the computer have similarities? Well, this might be crazy idea. For the psychologists who developed the information processing theory, they somehow compare the human brain to how a computer processes information and include that Just like how computer receive, stores, and retrieve information, so do our minds as we live day by day. Surely that somehow human brain processes information just like how computer do, but not the other way around. So that's all for Atkinson's and Shiffrin's cognitive information.